Hello, podcast listener. This is your host with the most, and I'm listening to an audiobook right now. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about creativity. We're going to talk about Cheez-Its, and we're going to talk about Tucker's family. All that and so much more on this episode of JJ Meets World. And by the way, if you'd like to help support our podcast, visit jjmeetsworld.com where you can donate to our Patreon, pick up some killer swag at our merch shop, or click the link to Apple Podcast and give us a 5-star review.
1, 2, 3, 4. J.J. Gordon, sort of like that Indiana Jones, in that he's always sniffing out his next adventure. Yes, he is. He's always interviewing guests so he can have them on his show and they can talk about pop culture, arts, and leisure. J.J. has his flag unfurled and he likes his french fries curled, and he's fun and then he twirled as he goes to meet the world. He will march into the rain even if his ankle sprained. Take a peek inside his brain. This podcast is called JJ Meets World.
Tucker, I was thinking about creativity, okay? And I was thinking to myself about the act of creativity, and this kind of popped to my mind. I've been listening to the worst audiobook of all time because the subject matter is driving me nuts. It's Don Bluth's autobiography, and it turns out Don Bluth isn't the most tragic story in Hollywood of the super talented guy who just happened to find misfortune. Nope, he brought it on himself. He is a what's that term they use in Las Vegas when they bring like a real milquetoast like loser over to a cooler. He is the cooler of animation. So I'm listening to this thing and I'm listening to his creativity, and I realize that some of his biggest flops are because they lacked the creativity to know when to stop. So here's an example. When you're working on a script, let's say you're making a short film, okay? You pour over the short, this short 20 pages, 5 pages, whatever it happens to be, and you keep going back and you edit and you change and you edit and you change and you edit and you change. But at one point, you've got to stop, right? You've got to stop and you have to realize, I can't do anything with this until I know more about what's actually going to take place. Like, for example, don't keep writing with a particular person in mind because that might not be the person who plays that part. But once that part is cast, it might change the tone a little bit. This person, if you cast a female who's really good with, let's say, screaming, right? Like you're making a horror movie and she's an amazing screamer. You're going to add more screams for her, right? Play to their most talented abilities. And in my life, I realized sometimes the balance between putting in enough work and putting in too much work can be the either side of the teeter-totter. But if you think of creativity like a teeter-totter, you can't just stand in the middle. You still kind of have to put a little weight here and a little weight there. You're still, even if you're in the center, at the fulcrum, I believe is the term.
Are you saying you're seeking balance?
Yeah, really a lot. And with creativity, you have to seek that balance.
So are you saying that Don Bluth is like a George Lucas original trilogy? Yes.
In fact, he worked with George Lucas for Land Before Time.
Can I ask you something quick? Because I love Don Bluth cartoons that I grew up with. Obviously, An American Tale is one of my favorite movies of all time, as is The Land Before Time. Then I think of other things like it was All Dogs Go to Heaven. Was that
Yep.
Bluth? There's a whole bunch.
Secret of NIMH.
But you know what though? I could look at a movie and just by looking at the animation style, I'd be like, oh, that's Don Bluth. But what is it about it that makes it Don Bluth? Is it like how the nose and mouth kind of works or something? Or there's some sort of visual trigger when I see animation in a Don Bluth film that sets it apart stylistically from Disney.
Yeah, but I think you could say that about Chuck Jones. You could say that about the stuff the 9 Old Men did at Disney.
But no, that's the question that I'm driving at, though.
What makes a Don Bluth a Don Bluth?
Why is it that this one art style, this drawing style, follows this one guy? Because he's not sitting there doing the animating himself, right? So is he going, okay, he's providing... What is Don Bluth providing? Is Don Bluth the one providing all of the character sketch details and this is the style guide and everything, or what is it that maintains the look of a Don Bluth? Because I can't actually put my finger on it, even though I can like, oh yeah, that's Don Bluth, but I couldn't tell you why. I could tell you why, oh, that's a Chuck Jones more than likely, or what have you.
So Don Bluth started as an animator, right? As he started like just as a regular everyday, like, cleanup and then in-betweener and all that kind of stuff. So he actually helps with the character design while they're working on new stuff. Okay, so let's say they're putting together Anastasia. He's going to help with character design and all of these things so that it has that Don Bluth feel, right? And I think even during like the animation process, he still is helping like with major scenes and stuff like that. And so then he storyboards everything. Okay, so you're going off of his stuff. And like, this is still at a time too when they made like maquettes, those like 3D, like versions of the character, so you could know what they look like on all sides. So I think that he had a big hand in a lot of that stuff. Now, right away when you're like, yeah, I love Don Bluth films. Like you named An American Tail and then you named Land Before Time back to back. Those are really Steven Spielberg's movies.
Okay.
Like in this book, like you'd think that he would take some of the credit for it, but he's like, no, Steven told us what to do. And Steven told us, even like this, I found out Fievel. So originally the character's name was Mousy Mouskowitz.
Oh.
Right?
Okay.
So like,
I didn't know that.
So Papa would be yelling, Mousy! Mousy! And late in the game, Steven Spielberg called and he goes, we're gonna name the main character Fievel Mouskowitz. And they're like, okay, why? And he's like, well, I'll tell you later. And so at the premiere, he told a story about how his grandfather, who also fled from Russia, was named Fievel. That was his grandfather's name. And so he did it in honor of his grandfather. And now that name has become synonymous with like a little plucky mouse that can do anything. So he's got some not so nice things to say about Steven Spielberg. Kind of that like Steven Spielberg kind of cheated him. But I'm like, did he cheat you? Or did he, like, was he just a movie maker and he wanted to get his movies made? So like this, An American Tail, awesome, right? But Fievel Goes West is better.
Not nearly as good.
It's so much better.
Not nearly as good.
Turns out Don Bluth not even involved at all in Fievel Goes West. So like they had to take the project away from him to make something better with Jimmy Stewart. And like Dom DeLuise was his like voice of reason, I guess. So if he had a problem, he called Dom DeLuise. So Dom did voice work in Secret of NIMH, in An American Tail, and Troll in Central Park. And so he did voice work for those three movies. And then he was Dunzo Bo Bunzo. Have I ever told you where that phrase comes from for me? Dunzo Bo Bunzo? Jill and I were picking up a gift at Barnes & Noble. And we were in line, holiday season, so lots of people. And we get up to this guy, and he's like, can you use your Barnes & Noble rewards card? We're like, excuse me? Like, are you using a Barnes & Noble rewards card? We're like, oh, no, thank you, but we'd like a gift receipt, please. And he's like, scan, boom. Your total's like $32.50. We give him a credit card, and then he prints out, and Jill goes, and the gift receipt? And he's like, what? Did you ask for one? And she's like, yes, I asked for a gift receipt before you rang these things up. And he goes, and then so he's like going back and like having to reprint the gift receipt because he understands that he didn't pay enough attention to the customer. Now we're not being rude. We're just like, we need a gift receipt for this book. And so at the end, it's super awkward because he's working and he has to call a manager over, and the manager's like, why didn't you just print this right away? And he doesn't want to say they didn't ask for it because we're right there. And he goes, oh, I forgot. And they're like, you need to ask the customer if they want a gift receipt. Did you? And then the manager goes, did you ask for a gift receipt? So then it like he's pulling us into this whole thing. And Joe said like, yeah, we did. And he goes, so why didn't you just push the gift receipt? And like really taking this kid to test. So I'm imagining that this kid is probably this isn't the first time that he's been somewhere else instead of at his till. And so at the end, we're in this awkward situation that's taken twice as long as it needs to. And he goes, all right, I guess we're Dunzo Bo Bunzo. And then I go, huh? And I have to walk away because I'm like, you just let your mouth do something you didn't intend. And so now Jill and I use the phrase "dunzo bobunzo" all the time.
And that every time you say it, I bet that dude has a bad day at work.
Oh, then he's having a bad day almost every single day. Dunzo bobunzo. And like, do you ever have one of those moments where you wish you could take back like maybe the last like 20 seconds of something you've been talking about where like, I just wish I hadn't said that.
The majority of the things I say typically fall into
You
that
wish to take it
category.
back?
Yeah. Do you think that I'm trying to eat my Cheez-Its away from the microphone? I
So
can't
people
tell
can't hear it?
if they're picking up. And
Can I make an observation?
Yeah.
So you love Cheez-Its. Tucker loves Cheez-Its.
Is that the observation?
He loves it so much that he is breaking a social rule by buying the family-sized box of Cheez-Its because that is an individual's box of Cheez-Its, not for a family. He just wants it for himself.
Do you think it makes any sense to at a grocery store have different sizes of Cheez-It boxes throughout the store?
Yes.
Why is that appropriate?
I think because you walk by the first time and you say like, no, I don't need Cheez-Its. And then the second time you see it, you're like, do I have Cheez-Its? I can't remember if I have Cheez-Its at home or not. And then that third time, it's like, you know what? The world is telling me, the universe is saying, pick up a box of Cheez-Its and you put it in your box. I bet you that third place that you see it, no matter which place you see first, second, third, in what order, but whatever the third place is for you as a customer is the one where you take the most Cheez-Its.
I went there to get Cheez-Its. So I went to the cracker aisle, found the Cheez-Its, grabbed the box, and I'm like, I'll walk around a bit and see if there's anything else I want to get while I'm here at the grocery store. In a totally different section, I find more Cheez-Its, but
What
a much
section?
larger box. It was just at the end of an aisle.
end cap.
An end cap on like toiletries or something. It was weird. I was like, oh, this box is way bigger than the one I just picked out in the Cheez-Its section. Well, I want this box because I'm here to get as many Cheez-Its
So
as I
did you
can.
put your box back with it?
No, I picked up the larger box. I walked
The
back.
family size, the one I'm looking at right now?
No, hold on.
Oh, God.
Hold on, JJ.
I'm going to stay silent.
This is a tale of three Cheez-Its. I walked back and I put the original box of Cheez-Its back in its place and just checked to make, well, I was like, oh, maybe the sizes are all here and I just missed it. That's a special section. No, they have like the normal size box just right here in the Cheez-Its where you'd expect to find them. So now I've got a larger box. I'm happy. I'm like, oh, hey, I've got more Cheez-Its now, right? You don't want to be the guy buying two boxes, right? If you want a lot, you want a larger box. So I'm walking around again going, well, I still haven't found that other thing. Maybe I want some sweet. Maybe I want like a soda pop or like some ice cream or a cookie with a bunch of frosting on it. I don't know, like, or Reese's peanut butter cups or something else. It could be a whole thing of pudding. I don't know. But I'm walking around and lo and behold, I find family-sized Cheez-Its in a totally different section, a third different section. And this box is much bigger than the one I'm carrying. So it's like it's almost probably twice the size of the original one. So I got to pick this one up and then I got to walk back and find the end cap that I brought this previous one from and put it back in its spot. So I had to walk a bunch of extra steps to do my Cheez-Its quest. That is bullshit.
Am I allowed to speak now? Is the story done?
So actually, I'm just like, the real thing here is that I'm just eating Cheez-Its for breakfast because I just woke up and I've got a busy day.
I noticed as you poured Cheez-Its into a bowl at your desk, at first I was like, is he going to eat them like cereal? And that's the worry with the Cheez-Its really, is because they are the most cereal shaped of all the crackers that you can purchase. So if you were Mr. Magooing it, you could accidentally pour a big bowl of Cheez-Its and then some whole milk on top. And maybe that's an invention that like should be.
I'm trying to think, is there a liquid that you could Mr. Magoo with some Cheez-Its and it would be like, you know what, this isn't a totally terrible idea.
I mean, here's the thing. You put
soup.
milk
It'd have
in,
to be a soup.
Right. You put milk into macaroni and cheese. So as long as you didn't put too much milk in, it might be delicious.
But the spirit
What
of
about
it,
pump cheese?
well, the spirit of it is that you've got a bowl filled with some dried thing, and then you're just going to put some liquid in it and eat it with a spoon. So maybe like a chicken stock
Nope. 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 Nope.
Like a-
Nope. Nope. Nope.
make like a
nope,
soup
nope,
of
nope,
some
nope,
kind.
Nope. 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 Nope.
We put crackers in soup all the time.
Yeah, but do you put cheese crackers in soups?
I'd try it. I would try it in a stew for sure. Oh, dude, I bet that would be delicious. I bet.
Your best bet would be a beer cheese soup. Like you can get away with putting Cheez-Its in a beer cheese soup, but putting
you could
Cheez-Its.
totally do a tomato soup.
Nope. I disagree.
Tomato soup.
Nope. I mean, we'll agree to disagree on this, but they go from there. I just actually read an interesting article about the science of grocery stores and about how grocery stores are not just willy-nilly laid out. They are absolutely planned by specialists who use different things to make people shop more while they are in the store. So, for example, when you walk in, most of the time, produce is the first thing you end up walking through. Bakery and produce are sometimes synonymous, sometimes not. And it's because the grocery store makes more money off of you buying fresh produce. And not only that, but it also goes bad faster than they do when you buy canned. So if they can get you to buy 6 ears of corn rather than 1 can of corn, they're going to make a bigger profit off of that. So they want you to hit that produce up first. So you see a delicious green bell pepper and you pick that up instead. And then just how like things are positioned throughout the store. Like milk used to be at the way back because people would come in for just something simple like milk and have to walk through the whole store to get it. Now, personally, I'm a horrible grocery store shopper because I shop a lot when I'm hungry and I will look at stuff and be like, that sounds awesome. I'll get that, regardless of what's in my pantry at the time. So, no joke, I made myself a delicious steak on Friday and I opened up our pantry and there were 10 cans of creamed corn and 10 cans of French-style sliced green beans. And the reason I had 10 of each is clearly I had been somewhere and been like, do I have green beans? Better get some. Do I have cream corn? Better get some. And I wasn't eating the cream corn as fast as I should have. Now, let me talk about cream corn for just a second, because cream corn is the unsung hero of the pantry staple. And people are like, cream corn is disgusting. I hate it.
Yeah.
No, it's delicious. It's wonderful. And let me give you some reasons why cream corn is so good. Number one, I make something that it had a term that you really can't use anymore. It wasn't really it wasn't racial, and it wasn't something that, made people. We just don't say it anymore, right? It's like saying raspberry when something goes wrong. It's just an old timey term.
Oh, raspberry.
Raspberry. Oh, buttons.
I kind of feel like we have we don't have an actual correct grasp of what old timey slang was. That we have new timey versions of old timey slang.
You think so?
Think anyone ever actually said, "Oh, raspberries"?
Yes, I do.
You think so?
Yeah. And I think they said like tickety boo. I think that there's a lot of weird stuff like that. So what it is you fry up some bacon and you take that bacon, you crumble it up and you put it in the cream corn. And then you thin slice some green onions and put it in the cream corn. And you mix it all up together while you're cooking it. Oh, it's so good. Oh, it's so good. Or you can do baked corn, which is something my grandma did every holiday, which is you take cream corn and you just mash up a bunch of saltine crackers and you put it in the corn and then you bake it and it becomes like kind of, it's not runny anymore. It's thick, like almost like cornbread.
I would actually try that.
Oh, it's so good. It's so good.
I thought you were saying like, yeah, you're literally just baking corn on the cob. And I was like, oh, that's actually kind of interesting.
So there's a discussion out there amongst people on TikTok about the best way to make corn. I've always boiled ears of corn.
Yeah.
Or I've put them on the grill, right? And they're like, if you boil corn, you're actually boiling the flavor out of corn, which is true, because I've always been told that when you boil anything, when you boil meats, when you boil vegetables, whatever, so much of it is leaching out into the water that you're not actually getting as much as you should be. And so they said, what you got to do is you cut the bottom, like not the tip part, but the bottom off of the corn cob, and you pop it in the oven at like 350 for 20 minutes. And then when it comes out, the corn is fully cooked underneath, and it actually slides right out of the husk with all the silk off of it. So you don't have to worry about shucking the corn before you put it in. I have yet to try that.
Interesting.
There's also people out there who save the water from stuff they boil things in. So if you boil pasta, let's say, they say that pasta water is really good to hold on to for stuff if you're going to make like some kind of a stock because it's ultra starchy.
Okay.
And recently I've been doing HelloFresh. And one of the tips in HelloFresh was when you boil these potatoes, because I was making mashed potatoes, save some of the starchy water for this mushroom sauce you're making because it'll make it thicker and be more flavorful than just adding a third of a cup of tap water.
Okay.
So
Mushroom sauce sounds disgusting.
Oh my God, it is so good.
But mushroom anything is disgusting.
It's thin sliced mushrooms, and then it's some sour cream and some beef stock in there.
There's only one.
It's so creamy and delicious.
Only one way I'll take mushrooms is only in a dish that uses cream of mushroom soup. Even though I don't even like cream of mushroom soup, but my grandmother used to make an egg bake basically that had a cream of mushroom soup in it, and but I always loved it, like the way she would use it and kind of layer it in. It always worked. But she she would call it turtle egg omelet because there were so many of us grandkids. It was like a running joke. Like if she was going to make breakfast and we were all around like being crazy and stuff, she'd say, "Kids, I need you to go down to the lakes and find me some turtle eggs so I can make turtle egg omelet." And so like we'd all go out looking for them. And she'd be like, "All right, everyone's out now. Thank God." And then she would make the omelet, and then we'd come back without having found any turtle eggs. And she'd be like, "Oh, hey, I forgot I had some in the fridge." It's like a running gag.
What if you guys had taken a turtle's eggs?
That would have been a tragedy because we wouldn't have been able to make anything out of them.
And then you'd stare at her while you hand them to her, and she'd have to use them. Like she'd have to crack them open, but they'd probably already been fertilized, and a tiny like stillborn baby turtle would end up in the frying pan. That would have really traumatized you guys. So she must have been like, these kids are dumb.
That would have been tough.
These dumbos don't know what they're looking for.
Would have been tough. That's the only way I'll eat mushrooms.
My father-in-law has a pond he built in the back of his house, right? So it's beautiful, fed through the Goose River, like it's gorgeous.
Isn't there a drone like at the bottom of it?
There is a drone. I mean, it was a drone and now it's a submarine. So that's at the bottom of it right now. Thank you so much for the forced update from that company from another country that forced me on me and then it crashed down to the sea. Now, given it did warn me before I took off that says like, update required, update required, update required. I didn't update because I'm like, I gotta get this thing in the air. But I was down there not too long ago, and he's got a prehistoric monster living in that thing. Imagine the size of like a platter that you'd use to carry turkey out. Okay, slightly smaller than a turkey platter is the shell circumference of a giant snapper turtle that he's got in there. I mean, this thing looks like it's from the prehistoric era.
Did it find its way there? Or did he put it in?
No. He would never put that in because it eats all the fish that he stocks in his pond. And his fish in this pond are trained so that when he walks on the dock and they feel the vibration of the dock in the water, they all come running because he feeds them popcorn and bread and like smelt and all that stuff. And the turtle comes over too because he'll do things like hold out, like a minnow or whatever he's got so the turtle can eat. And I was like, Pete, you're going to lose a finger.
Yeah.
Like that snapping turtle is like, oh, he got me once and he got, he just got me on the side a little bit. So, and I'm like, yeah. And he's like, maybe I'll start using a pliers to hold it down there. And I'm like, that's not going to help you because he's going to look at those delicious.
Here's the thing. You don't need to
hot dog
hold anything.
Right.
You can just toss it in.
This thing's been alive for 200 years. It knows how to hunt.
Yeah, it's like, I got it, buddy. It's like, he doesn't need to feed it because it's feeding.
Right, and I'm like, one day this thing, like, snapping turtles are the worst.
They'll fuck you up.
They will big time, man.
Yeah.
Like, I'm kind of afraid of snapping turtles, and that's a legit serious thing.
Mm-hmm.
I've been afraid of them since I was a little kid. We had a little tiny plastic wheelbarrow like kids could use. You couldn't do any actual work. So like if you gave a bunch of like landscapers these little things, they'd be pissed.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had a snapping turtle over by our clothesline at the lake, and my dad had to go take care of it. And so he took this thing and he went and his idea was, I'm going to get it underneath the snapping turtle and then I'll flip it up and then it'll send the turtles like rolling into the banks and into the lake and it'll leave. So he gets there, and I watched that thing's neck come out and like snap, and it didn't hit my dad. Luckily, he got into the water, but like its tail was so big and dense that when it landed in the water, like near the beach, and took off, you could see the trail its tail left in the sand.
Yeah, I've seen it where two people will approach, and one person will have like some kind of a pole, like a broom pole or something, and they'll put it in front of the turtle, and the turtle will snap onto it, will bite onto it. So they go, okay, we kind of know where his beak is right now. And then the next person will get behind them and just grab onto the shell, because then he can't like twist his neck around to get you at the shell. But yeah, they're like leathery, and they can get absolutely massive, and they are just murder machines. They're like, yep, I just hunt things. Yeah. That's all I do. I hunt. Nothing eats snapping turtles besides maybe people.
Yeah, they're the tank of the animal world, right?
Yeah.
Like,
at least I think nothing eats snapping turtles beyond people, but maybe someone.
Just the ravages of old age.
Yeah.
One of my favorite movies that nobody ever wants to watch is Almost Heroes, which is a movie that stars Chris Farley and Matthew Perry.
It's his last movie.
Is it? Yeah.
Yeah. We've had this discussion.
Oh, did we?
Yeah.
Have I talked about Almost Heroes a lot on this podcast?
I think recently before.
Oh, I love it. There's a great scene where one character gets like pulled out of this campsite by a bear, and like they all have to freeze, and like because the bear won't see him if they freeze, and he goes, "My nose itches," and he goes, "Don't scratch," and he goes, "I don't know which is worse, the bear or my itchy nose." And then the guy itches his nose, the bear sees him and takes away. He goes, the bear is much worse. And so the character's name is Bitwell. And the next day he shows up again, and the bear's eating his leg, and he's asking Matthew Perry, "I'm sure you want to put a hunting party together to go avenge, the leg that the bear has stolen from me." And he goes, yes, indeed. Or we could wait, because time is cruel, and the ravages of old age will certainly be much worse to the bear than anything we could ever do. He goes, "Revenge is sweet, sir." And it's that kind of like, there's something about taking risks, going back to creativity, like taking risks that may not pay dividends right away, but do later on. Like, to me, I quote that movie all the time. If I ever meet Christopher Guest in person, I will tell him, like, listen, I love the movie Almost Heroes, and I know that it's kind of a black spot on your career, but I loved it.
You were saying that Don Bluth either had too much creativity or not enough?
Yeah.
Meaning?
So, like, there were times when he's like, "Oh, we're going to make a movie, and it's going to be called Troll in Central Park." And so he'd essentially like agree to like make this movie in 12 months and then like not write a very good script for it. And he clearly is not smart enough as a man to like be like, okay, I should have put more effort into the story of a Troll in Central Park. Or he gets too involved in making something like so intense that like Titan AE was his last big feature, right? So he gets too in his head about like all this stuff, and then they go over budget, and they, are not. And then like what you ultimately end up with is like garbage. He also, I don't know. Did you ever see the movie Anastasia?
Oh yeah.
Best part of Anastasia in your opinion?
I just remember isn't there a bat who's kind of electric?
Bingo.
Yep.
Bingo. Bartok the Bat, voiced by Hank Azaria. Mm-hmm. It's the comedic relief of the whole movie. It's hilarious. So they filmed the entire movie in live action, like on a soundstage, and then they traced over the live action. That's why like the movements in it look so weird, because they're actually tracing over an actual coat that someone's wearing. And so Don Bluth is like, in my archive somewhere, there's the actual Anastasia, which I think might be better than the animated version. I'm like, if something you shot on a soundstage with nothing but just some costuming is better than your animated movie, you messed up. You did a horrible job. You effed this in the B. So, but to me, the thing that they couldn't trace over or had no like basis of knowledge is Bartok the Bat. Sometimes I think people just need to stick to stuff. Like, one of the smart things I think in The Incredibles is they use non-realistic human proportions, right? And because of that, it gives you the creativity to work with the fluid of the movement and how, things are portrayed and how your character design is. The more you try and get human-like movement, you are losing. What the most jarring parts of the Toy Story series is whenever you're with, I think, like Andy. Like Andy never looks good. Like Andy always looks like he's got dead eyes. It just is bizarre to me.
You know,
even in like Toy Story 3.
I mean, wasn't Ralph Bakshi, all of his animations were basically rotoscope like that?
Yeah.
So they have a very specific look to them because they were using people.
Yeah.
Which is probably cheaper.
It's probably why people were so attracted to the movie Cool World and like the Kim Basinger like cartoon. And that's one of the weird things too, is like there's this weird world where like people are really attracted to cartoons that makes me very uncomfortable. And I'm really only uncomfortable here because like, that's never going to happen. It's one thing to sit and pine over Angelina Jolie. And you know what? There is a universe where you meet Angelina Jolie and she falls in love with you and she's really interested in your career at H&R Block and you guys end up like falling in love and growing old together. That universe does not exist when it comes to animated characters. You will never, ever, not even in the metaverse, have a chance to have a meaningful, lasting relationship, and certainly nothing physical with an animated character. So if your biggest crush is Jessica Rabbit, I got bad news for you. It just isn't going to happen. And that's just the way it is.
Can't you like print Jessica Rabbit out onto like a pillow and then marry the pillow or something?
No, I mean, you could, but it's still not the same. Mm-hmm. You're still, no matter how many like DPIs your printer has, right? Like it's just never going to be as realistic as you think it is for Eddie Valiant in that movie. It's just not going to happen.
If they could only get the DPI ratio to a sexy level.
It's much deeper. It's going to be so much deeper. And that's why I think movies like Cool World exist. And if you've never seen Cool World, the premise is there's a world, whenever you animate something, there's another dimension where that creature has its own life. And one of the animators gets sucked into his own drawing and then brings one of the drawing, this woman named Hollywood, out with him. And he also is in prison for something at the very beginning of the movie. It's Gabriel Byrne. And then he gets out of prison, but then he starts becoming animated. It's a horrible movie.
How does Brad Pitt come into it, though? Yeah. Is he like he's a...
Brad Pitt. Oh, so in the 50s, Brad Pitt picks his mom up on a motorcycle he just purchased. And this is at the very beginning of the movie. And then the motorcycle crashes and his mother is dead and he's dying on the side of the road. And all of a sudden an animated creature like appears and pulls him into the animated world where you don't die. Like if you're a toon, toons don't die. Okay. So, and then they kind of explain it, but then he becomes the cop of the toon world, making sure that people aren't crossing over. I mean, the premise of the movie is mind-bending. And I'm sure that there are plenty of people out there who are like, this movie's going to make $1 million, man.
You know what's kind of crazy is that we're getting new X-Men episodes of the old Fox cartoon that's coming out. I never thought that would have ever happened.
Really?
Well, yeah. I mean, whoever would have thought that cartoon would have been brought back?
I never thought they'd bring back that cartoon. I figured X-Men would live on in some other form, right?
Because it has.
And like, do people even do that style of animation anymore? Did they have to like go and knock on somebody's door and be like, "Hi, listen, I know we fired you from Fox Animation in 1993, but could you come back and draw Wolverine for us again, please?"
Yeah, all I know is that they've released at least like stills, like cells of how the characters look. So like the designs are basically the same with some updates. But yeah, I'm sure there will be more modern techniques employed. But I was just thinking about this, I think yesterday. I was thinking about the movie Fantasia.
Mm-hmm. One of my all-time favorites.
A true masterpiece of a film. And I was curious about Night on Bald Mountain because I didn't know that the demon actually had a name. Because Walt had referred to him as just Satan himself before, but he's got an actual name. It's they use the name from some, I don't know, I want to say it's like a Slavic country or something, some god of death. And I was reading about like the specific animator who animated this demon and the reference points they were using and the techniques they were using to make it. And I just thought, what would it take to make something again but using all of these old techniques to specifically get the look that they had back then, right? So like if you did just right now, we're going to copy every single technique. We're going to shoot things on film, and it's going to be, glass plates, over top of glass plates and stuff. And we're going to take all these, people hours to like get stuff painted and done. How much would that cost? And what would the effect look like? Like, I'm so curious about how much of it is the technique itself versus some sort of thing about the time.
What would be, you almost can't figure out the cost, right? Because no one makes animation cells anymore like they did. Back in the day, you'd order 10 million cells a year for Disney Studios. So you're going from the ground up on literally all aspects of that, even to the point of saying like, well, we don't make some of these art tools anymore. So you'd have to find someone who could go back and figure out how to get the exact, Crayola grease paint and things that they do. But what's interesting to me is this: as nostalgia continues to pour into the economy and continues to influence Hollywood, because people like you and I are like, we've got full-time jobs and we're spending money. So Disney Plus, if you want my money, I need more X-Men. To see how they try and revive some of that stuff, and if they do. And there are plenty of people like Don Bluth. You could pull him out of mothballs. He lives in Scottsdale, Arizona. He teaches Sunday school, and that sounds like it's about what he does, like, with his golden years. And so you could pull 93-year-old Don Bluth out of the...
He's 93?
Yeah.
Wow.
At least he was when he wrote this book. You could pull him out of mothballs and get him to help you with some stuff, which is funny because when he was pioneering his version of animation in the late 70s, early 90s, he was relying on the 9 old men, the people who animated like Snow White and like had that huge hand in Fantasia. And so they were constantly learning from like another generation. And so this next generation is going to have to take it out from this. This is another reason why like Don Bluth, I'm like, oh my God. So it's 2005 and he's trying to pitch hand-drawn animated movies to people, and they're like, no. And so he goes, I went back and I talked to my writing partner. I'm like, well, I think CGI is here to stay. You think? It's been more than 10 years since Toy Story. Toy Story 2 is huge. The Shrek franchise is out there. They're just making animated films now in CGI because guess what? It actually ends up being a little bit cheaper once you invest in the technology, and computers are the way to do, there's less mess ups and you can change things if you need to.
Right. But also assets created get reused all the time too. Yeah. So there's just more profitability for sure.
Which I guess they did in animated movies. You can watch sequences back like in Robin Hood and Jungle Book where they're the same, like it's the same running and like you just put the overlay of the new character on top of it.
Yep, to save time and money.
Yeah. Here's an interesting fact about Fargo, North Dakota. Do you know who Iworks is?
Yeah, I've heard the name.
So Iworks, Walt Disney gets all this credit for being this huge innovator and stuff like that, but it's Iworks who really does everything. So it's who actually creates like what Mickey Mouse looks like today, right? So this more modern take on Mickey Mouse. Iworks is this animator and inventor who works for Disney Studios and revolutionizes everything in the animation world. So one of the things he does is he invents a thing called the multi-plane camera, where they put different plates of glass and they put different stills on it, and the glass all moves at the same time, frame by frame by frame. So it actually, so if you have like pull in on like a farmhouse from a distance away, it actually looks like you're moving in, but without having to animate like, an inch closer, an inch closer, an inch closer. And the multi-plane camera becomes one of the most important things in animation in all time. So Iworks is just this amazing dude, and like the Disney Corporation would not exist today if it were not for Iworks and all of his inventions and all of the things he did with animation, yada yada yada. So I'm at a Sanford Children's Hospital event, and I meet a woman whose last name is Iworks, and I'm like, oh, there's a guy for Disney, and he's like, yeah, that's my husband's or my ex-husband's like great uncle. And I'm like, what? That's crazy. Like, so then I'm talking about Iworks on the radio, and I get this woman who calls in. She's like, that's my great grandpa. And I was like, what? So there's a whole bunch of like Iworks descendants who live in the Fargo-Moorhead area. And that is, it's like having a bunch of people being like, oh, Steven Spielberg's my uncle. Like, who just had, like, oh, I'm Karen Spielberg.
And he would have been based out of California?
Yeah. Actually, I believe he moved from New York to California. And so at one point he had a family member who was like, I hate the weather out here. And the smell of orange groves sickens me. I'm going to move to North Dakota. You ever get sick and tired of when like North Dakota's the butt of a joke, or like, do you think we find it funnier than anybody else?
I actually don't care, because I'm like, yeah, I mean, they're right. That's true. This place is flat and fairly boring for the most part. And
I appreciate a good joke about how like North Dakota we are, but I think there's some low hanging fruit. For example, one of my favorite North Dakota jokes is another Christopher Guest movie called The Mighty Wind. And in The Mighty Wind, it's about, the premise is that a music promoter who is famous in the folk era passes away, and his kids decide that they're going to have this concert, an ode to Irving, and bring back all these old folk groups from the 60s and 70s. And so one of the kids, two of them like run the operation now and like watch over their dads, like millions of dollars worth of royalties. And one of them goes, I never really liked folk music. So I actually, after I graduated from high school, moved out to North Dakota. They don't have any music out there. So it's been nice. And I enjoy that.
But whatever we get, the South gets it worse.
Oh, without a doubt. Every time
Florida.
Every time someone like mentions like, hey, you want to go south? I always think, but a ding, 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 ding. And listen, while some of the North Dakota jokes ring true, some of the Southern jokes ring true as well.
Oh, beyond ring true, are true.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Remember when we went to that flea market with your grandma? And I was like, look, someone's got the new Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. This only came out last week. A dude was full on selling bootlegs that he had taped himself. So I bought Wedding Crashers and Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I couldn't believe it. I was like, and the quality, it was so bad. It was so bad. Oh, it was embarrassingly bad.
that Don Bluth book, are you audio taping it?
Yeah. I bought the actual book. And it came, like, the publisher contacted me and said, we'll give you the audiobook too.
I know you've been slogging through it.
Yeah.
How does it fit into your day to listen to your audiobook? Like, at what point in your day are you fitting that in? It can't be the commute, because that's 5 minutes.
No, but, like, sometimes my commute isn't 5 minutes, right? Like, sometimes I got to go and I got to pick something up, or I drive to an interview, or I'm heading out to, like, the fair to broadcast from there. So it starts with that. And then also like during the morning, like when I do the treadmill and I get ready in the shower and all that kind of stuff. Like, so there's an hour every morning I probably listen.
Okay.
Straight like through. And then when I'm mowing the lawn, I pop my earbuds in. By the way, earbud technology. Oh my God. It's amazing. I waited for a long time to get into these things, but they are really top notch.
I love it. I love not having the cable.
Yeah. To me, it's not just the cable. The noise canceling that takes place is superb.
How close to being done with your audiobook are you?
I can tell you right now. I was listening to it on the way here today.
Is it read by Don Bluth?
Yes, it is.
So it's read by a 93-year-old man.
Yeah, and who enunciates everything like this? And here's
How
the thing:
are you sticking through this?
Oh, it's tough. It's so tough. And here's the biggest issue with this. So coming from someone who appreciates the quality of audio, I know that's always been a big thing for JJ Meets World when you're, engineering it, is making sure it's high quality audio. There are clearly parts of this where when they recorded it didn't work. And so they, rather than getting him to like come back into a studio and re-record it, he must have used his phone to re-record a piece and send it, because it's drastically different. Like, and it'll be something like this. It'll be like, and that's when I animated Fievel the Mouse. He was my favorite character, but that's when I animated Fievel the Mouse. He was my favorite character. And so it's just like a single line. I have 1 hour and 15 seconds left.
Oh my God. Jesus, that's still a lot.
Yeah, and I don't listen to it at like double speed. I listen to it at single speed.
That makes zero sense to me, that anyone who does that. I don't understand, like, I would really like to listen to this as though I were having a panic attack right now. That would be great. That would be really great, please. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, Sometimes you just gotta, and I know that's like a huge thing even with podcasts, right? It's like people do love to hear it at like 1.5 times.
I would say definitely though that maybe this episode isn't going to be a high quality audio because I've been eating Cheez-Its into this microphone.
But there's a difference between hearing the sound of you crunching through those starchy snacks versus like having just like, like it's sounding like it's in a tin can or sounding like you're in the bowel of a ship.
I've done 2 bowls of it so far.
Stop eating them.
I'm stopping right now.
Also, I see that you get some Minecraft points with the purchase of this box.
Yeah. It's in what's Kaboom, in partnership with Kaboom. I don't know what that is.
Do you think Minecraft as a game is going to like last for the next 50 years?
Well,
like, is this a new version of like the Mario?
It's lasted
world?
for so long as is that kids seem to keep rediscovering it. They keep
I've never
adding
played
things to it. It's fun. I've got it. I mean, it's just, it's like playing Legos, but in a big 3D world, basically.
And everyone loves the pigs, I guess? Like pigs, block pigs?
Yeah. You can, there's all sorts of animals that you can hunt and then cook their meat and eat them. You can also breed them. So if you get, two pigs together, and they don't specify gender at all. They just go there. That's one pig and that's another pig, and you want them to make another pig. And so then you feed them something and it makes them horny. And then they kind of like vibrate next to each other. And then a little baby pops out. And then you've got a baby pig and it'll grow up into be a big pig. So if you're like, hey, I want to have a steady supply of ham, but I don't want to keep going all over this world to find pigs to slaughter. So I'm going to lure in a couple of pigs into this paddock I've just built. And then I'm going to trap them in there forever. And then I'm going to feed them every day so they get horny and make new babies, so that I'll eventually just have a paddock filled with these like.
So you're telling me that it's incest. So you could have a mama pig. I mean, are there sexes? Is there like a
no?
lady
I just
pig?
said they don't
just
specify
two
that
pigs.
Yep.
So you could have a dad, and then what is their son or daughter? Make a pig.
You have pig and pig. That's what you've got.
So you got 2 pigs, and so they might be pigs that are related. They may have been like
it's hard to, you can't really tag them to know who's what, but the bloodlines don't really work that way necessarily in Minecraft world.
See, now I'd be that person in the boardroom who's like, we need to address the incest. We need to figure out a way to make it. Like, what about a bow? We could put bows on pigs, and then you could change the color, because people like me don't want to breed 2 teals together. Only teal and purple.
You can also breed sheep, and then you can dye the sheep's wool. And so you could have like, here's a paddock of pink sheep, and here's a bunch of green sheep, and here's a bunch of purple sheep.
Really?
Yep. And then you can harvest their wool without killing them. You can just shear them,
and
then you can make things out of the wool.
There are millions of children who have this amazing experience with Minecraft and like setting up their own like farms and stuff like that. And then one day they're going to go to a real farm and they're going to be like, God damn, this sucks. This is certainly not what I signed up for.
Yeah.
Like, frequent guest Natalie Deutsch LaPlante showed me this chicken plucking machine that they bought because she's now plucking chickens, and it's a big metal drum with what look like hot dogs.
I was gonna say, yeah, like, isn't it like rubber things that hit it?
And
hit
so
them
it spins around and it beats off the feathers on this thing. And she's showing me this video, and I was like, I mean, if a kid saw this, they would be completely taken away, and like the magic of it. Like, what do you mean? I just don't put one chicken next to another chicken that vibrates and it's going to go. She also had a chicken who murdered. Like, do you remember that when she's telling us that she had a chicken who murders other chickens?
Yeah.
And it's not just the pecking order. She'll go in and break all the eggs so that there can be no next generation.
Chickens will absolutely fuck things up. They really will. They can cause a lot of damage if they want to.
Birds in general, like, we should be afraid. Do you know how smart crows are?
Very, very.
It's just insane.
I mean, all these creatures have like knives for mouths, basically.
Yeah. And they have intense memories. I want to leave talking about Listerine, though. It's a hard left.
That was, wow.
Hard left.
Yeah. Even watching you do it was weird.
So this dude invents Listerine back in like 1885. Okay.
People are going to think I edited something out, and then
Nope.
suddenly you're just talking about Listerine.
It's went in like this because I read an article about this like a year ago, and I read another article recently, and I think it's an interesting story that we need to share.
Just to be clear, we did just talk about birds and their beaks and how dangerous they are, and he did transition just to Listerine.
Yes.
So I'm saying to you now, I haven't edited anything out from there. That's not
now
like
it makes it seem like you did. Like this is a cover up.
Well,
This is not a cover up, but I'm winking. Why am I winking? So this dude invents Listerine, and it's a mouthwash, but they don't call it mouthwash back in the day. They call it something like, breath powder or some junk like that. So I believe Procter & Gamble approaches him and like, we want to buy Listerine. He goes, all right, but here's the deal. I'm going to own 50% of Listerine. So whenever you sell a bottle, I get 50% of the sales from it. And they're like, okay. And he goes, in perpetuity, forever. And they're like, okay, whatever. We'll call it shares. You have 50 shares out of 100 shares of Listerine. He goes, okay, in perpetuity. They're like, in perpetuity. So what has happened is Listerine controls 95% of its market. Like when you think of the number of places that are buying Listerine, and like store brands are required to, like, let's say you go and you buy the Up and Up mouthwash, it goes, this is not Listerine. Like you have to include it on there. And like Listerine owns their market for mouthwash. So this guy ends up dying. And Procter & Gamble thinks like, okay, well, we'll just, now we own all of Listerine. They're like, nope. According to this, he's willed like 5 shares to this and 5 shares to this. And these shares are going to go in public market and stuff like that. And they're like, oh, I guess that's what perpetuity means. So every now and then, a rare, like single share or half of a share for Listerine becomes available to the public market. And it pays out quarterly, and people will bid like upwards of like $600,000 for a single share of Listerine. But in 5 years, it's paid out over $100,000. So if you think of someone who in the 80s, let's say, bought a share of Listerine for $200,000, after 7 or 8 years, you now are just reaping in profit nonstop. Mm-hmm. And sales of Listerine don't go down. They continue to just go up and up and up and up. And people are buying more Listerine, especially like during the pandemic. People bought Listerine like crazy. And so every now and then this happens. And it's really popular with universities who are working on endowment funds because that there's this constant source of income that gets paid out to you every quarter by Procter & Gamble. So if they sell $1 million worth of Listerine this year, it means $500,000, or this month, let's say, $500,000 is going to be paid out to all these people who own other shares. And so you just get a check in the mail. So Tucker, my proposal to you is next time one of these things goes up for sale, I think that you and I should try and acquire one.
I would love that.
Apparently, like banks, like if you approach a bank saying like, I'd like to borrow like $60,000 to, purchase a chunk of Listerine stock, they're like, absolutely. And this is one of those weird financial things that exist in the world where it's a 100% winner, like no matter what. And I think the biggest publicly owned piece of stock is someone owns like 2.5 shares, and they just get money all the time.
The shares are being like even divided up into smaller sections, basically smaller fractions.
So like if you and I bought a share, we each technically own half of a share. And so if I want to get out of it, I either sell you my other half or I sell my half to somebody else. So yeah, you can get like 1/10 of a share of Listerine.
Gotcha.
Right? And so you just get 1/10 of whatever one share is worth, And it's become this thing that is just bizarre and weird, but I'm like, I want to own some Listerine. Like people are out there looking for treasure. They want to find sunken ships. There's some people who think that they're going to find a silver mine somewhere in Colorado. I want to have a Listerine fortune where I'm like, your bad breath is my new yacht. So, I mean, there are weirder things that people have purchased, I'm sure, but that's the one thing that I really
How did this factoid come across your desk?
So I got there was a small Reddit article about it where someone had posted like, hey, this share of Listerine is coming available because someone died and their estate was liquidating it. And I was like, well, that's really interesting. And then recently someone like printed something out and literally put it on my desk and said, hey, I knew you were interested in this Listerine thing. And I think one of the big, like maybe the New York Post or the Times did a story about how Listerine is paying dividends out every quarter to people who own shares of their company.
Right. That's crazy. That's crazy.
And like the price of Listerine continues to go up, but people continue to buy it. And it's like Gerber, right? At one point, Gerber owned the baby food market.
Yep.
Right? No one else was making baby food like more than Gerber, and 9 out of 10 jars were going to have that dopey looking baby on it.
Well, I'm assuming Kleenex has like a massive,
right?
Just because its brand name is synonymous with the item itself.
Right. And there are store versions of these products of, tissue paper, but most people are buying Kleenex, right? And then think about like Listerine has a deal with hotels, right? Where they're like, oh, we're going to put little tiny bottles of Listerine for people who come in as like a compliment, like here's some complimentary stuff. Have you ever been in a hotel where it says, if you forgot something, please ask and we can help you out? Have you ever called them out on that and been like, hey, I forgot my comb?
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, I haven't done a comb for years, but I've done like toothbrush, toothpaste, stuff like that.
Combing out your downstairs garden on a daily basis? Oh, it becomes so silky and smooth. I do 100 strokes every single night. Yeah. 1, 2, 3. It's also good to make sure that no foreign objects have gotten stuck in there.
How thick is yours?
Not that thick, but just in case, you never know. Like
I was eating a chili dog the other day, and I was like, I ate 3/4 of a chili dog, and someone was like, "Why only 3/4?" And I was like, "The other fourth was just in my beard."
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I had an uncle who would be like, "Oh, you've got something in your mustache." He goes, "Oh, I'm saving it for later."
I had an uncle too.
Did you have an uncle?
Yeah,
oh,
I have
really?
I have a few others still.
What's your on the count of 3? Say your uncle's name. 1, 2, 3. Paul
John,
McDonald,
Jim, Tim, Mike, George, Paul,
Ringo,
Howie.
Howie. You've got an uncle named Howie.
Uncle Howard. His name is Howard. We call him Uncle Howie.
Yeah.
He's married to my Aunt Kay.
You should start calling him the Duck.
The Duck?
Yeah. Just like that's a new nickname. Be like, oh, we got to get a Christmas present for Kay and the Duck. Because somebody should be nicknamed after Howard the Duck.
How many uncles do I have right now? Like 7? I've got a lot of uncles.
You do have a lot of uncles.
Yeah, I do.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
You've accrued a lot of uncles in your life.
I have an embarrassment of riches when it comes to uncles.
I assume that there's a good amount of aunts that go along with that.
Yeah, for a fair amount of aunts as well in the mix. I myself am an uncle.
Yeah. Oh, you are.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm going to see my nephew at the end of this month, which will be pretty fun.
Oh, that'll be good
but
for you.
But I got to go to the south. I have to go to Arkansas.
But ding, 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 ding. You have to go to Jonesboro specifically.
Jonesboro.
When you walk into when you get into town, be like, "Hey, what's this town famous for?" And they're like, "We don't want to tell you. we don't really want to talk about that much." Okay, Tucker, it's time to put this episode of JJ Meets World to bed, so you can eat some more Cheez-Its, drink some more water.
I need more.
No, you're gonna have some more. I know you're gonna have. Today is a Cheez-Itsy day.
I'm gonna get sick to my stomach.
Cheez-Its is the one company that really knows how to be like, you know what? We're smarter than the average consumer, because do you notice how there's like 9 versions of Cheez-Its now? There's like Cheddar Jack, and then there's one called Extra Toasty, which is pretty much, we burned these, but we know you money mouths are going to buy them.
I think that's when you're like, oh, they got some new person in the executive suite who thinks they're going to like change things up. They're like,
let's
hey,
stop throwing out the garbage. These are perfectly good Extra Toasty Cheez-Its.
Mm-hmm.
Put them in a box and sell them. That's going to wrap it up for today's show. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to help us continue to produce new episodes each week, visit jjmeetsworld.com, where you can donate to our Patreon, pick up some swag at the merch shop, or follow our link to Apple Podcasts and leave us a 5-star review. You can also follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, all the sites the cool kids are using these days. JJ Meets World is produced every week by Tucker Lucas. You can find out more about Tucker's work by visiting moonbasemaria.com. If you want to get in touch with your host with the most, check out linebenders.com, where you can find direct contact info for JJ or booking information. The one kind of Cheez-Its that I don't want is Cheez-Its the Empty Box edition. Because it'd be so disappointed. cheese tits.